Okay. All right, we're starting. Kate, are you ready? You want the lights on or off?
Go.
Hi.
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 Hello.
I'm Kate McFadden. I'm an artist. Before this project, I was primarily an abstract expressionist. I was sort of a flip-flopper, I guess. I painted a lot of landscapes and a lot of abstract expressionist stuff. And I kind of go in between the two. The one really informs the other. It's sort of this yin and yang balance for me, because I think there's so much of landscape that's really abstract, and so much of the abstraction that really refers to landscape. The idea that you could just draw a line across the center of a canvas and automatically you would think, your brain would make a connection that that's a horizon. I mean, that's a very simple idea, but it's a very profound one to me. But, I've always sort of concentrated on this outside world. There's always been a divide between, the personal and then my art. When I was 13, I was raped, and after my freshman year, the summer after my freshman year, I was raped again. That has sort of taken a toll on me personally and emotionally and mentally. But I found recently that it's starting to want to come out. Like all summer, I was trying to paint, and even a little bit in the fall too. And I'd be doing abstract paintings, and I'd come out and I have all these snippets from a journal, or I'd even just sort of go downstairs after working all day and a bottle of wine and just sit there and I wake up the next morning and I found that I'd written all over my canvases talking about rape, and so it sort of needed to come out in a way, but I couldn't figure out how to translate it, and I just felt so lost. And that was all last summer. And I'd be ashamed, and then I'd come back and I'd tape over it or paint out all the words that I'd written. And I needed someone to sit me down and be like, it's okay to do this. And that's also, in terms of worthiness, it's like, well, what is it going to look like? Does it stand up to artistic scrutiny? It's great, I've seen a lot of artwork that's like, oh, it's about this idea, but it doesn't match. And so it's sort of, it's like the idea is either really interesting or the form is really interesting, but it never clicks. And coming up with the images that would express it, and knowing that it's okay to do paintings about this. And I always sort of was like, of course, yes, it's okay to do paintings about this. But it wasn't okay when I was at home, because I was surrounded by my family. My parents don't know about any of this stuff. My grandmother doesn't know about this. And they're all coming for the opening, which is sort of freaking me out because I've got to find a way to tell them before then. I didn't really involve them in a lot of the process of because I'm very stubborn and I'm sort of a do-it-yourself kind of person. But I just didn't want to tell my parents. I don't know. I just didn't. I just sort of wanted to be like, okay, I'm going to get through this on my own. And you guys are going to question me, which they did. And they're going to be like, what the hell is wrong with you? Which they did. And it wasn't like a retribution or something. I don't know. It was just, I just didn't want to involve them. I guess I just sort of been masochistic in that way. And because I also didn't think that they could help all that much. And I didn't want there to be this huge elephant in the room.
The second image that we will see, if the computer ever loads my gigantic file, because digital imaging is not one of my talents yet, not yet plugged in, is a photograph, actually a painting of my great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather, John Bennion, who was born in Wales and came to Nauvoo, Illinois in 1842, then crossed the plains with the Mormon pioneers in 1847 with his first wife, Esther, and then he married his second wife, Esther Ann, and then his third wife, Mary, and I can never remember whether I'm descended from Esther Ann or Mary, but I am from a 6th generation Mormon family on one side and 5th-generation Mormon family on the other side.
Are you a Jack Mormon or a real Mormon?
I am an ex-Mormon. The next image that we would see if my presentation ever loaded would be a whole bunch of people who are my parents, my 6 younger brothers and sisters, and their spouses, and one of my nephews. It was taken 3 years ago. I now have 5 additional nieces and or nephews and 2 on the way. And I'm not in the picture. They did leave space for me, but they did not leave space for my partner, Lynn. The next image that you would see would be me and my partner, Lynn Clark, and our 3 cats, which was taken on October 26th of this year, which was our 10-year anniversary. And also the day we put to sleep my cat, Lucy, who I had for 13 years. There we go. So that's my family. And they really are completely delightful. The last photograph I have of all of us, speaking of photo evaluation, my face is half cut off.
Do they accept you or not?
They love me. They tried disowning me and then figured out it wasn't going to make me a different person. And so they're trying to work it out as best they can. They don't want me near their children. But I really adore them. Okay, there's my little family. This is Lucy, who is the love of my life. And Lynn knows that, and there's just no getting around. But I'm really, really hot for this moment. After all these years.
I married young, I had kids young, I was a typical teenager of the 70s with a dysfunctional family, and so I got away by getting married, which was kind of dumb. I was divorced when my second child was 2 months old, and my first one was 3, so I'd always been a compulsive sketcher, and I thought of myself as an artist at heart, but kind of had to feed my kids. Finally, my kids grew up. But I went to school as well and majored in art history. About 2 semesters after I started, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. Stayed in school, stayed working. That summer, of course, I didn't have to go to school, and I had my surgery and I started painting. I found it to be really therapeutic, and it really helped me get through the recuperation. And I started back to school about 3 days before chemotherapy, and I went through the chemotherapy and did business as usual. And right after I finished all my therapy, I kind of had a little meltdown, and I started thinking about how, I don't know, I just felt like the essence of my femininity was trying to kill me. And I started looking at it in a whole different perspective, how, you know, women have been looked at for a long time and dealt with. I dealt with a lot of things during that time, and art really got me through it.
Okay, Kate. Take a deep breath.
Yeah, I've had trouble sleeping the last week. Because I have nightmares that are getting worse and worse and worse and worse. I've been having nightmares that are getting intensely worse every night.
That's because you're getting close to trying to deal with this stuff.
No, I say I've dealt with it. It's just getting back into it and thinking stuff explicitly, which is what I've been doing. I have a journal that's about 10 years old.
Have you dealt with it in your art? Not that I saw.
Not really. I mean, I've done a lot of self-portraits and sort of trying to get at that moodiness that I was talking about. but it's more of the way that, I don't know, when Laura mentioned last week, getting secrets, denials, and negations, like those words really hit home for me, because a lot of the way that I have dealt with rape throughout the last 10 years has been it's an internalization, and I take it out of myself. And so that impacts the way that I perceive, I don't know, and it's come out in self-portraits mostly, and I haven't dealt with it otherwise.
I think I did a lot of the legwork at the beginning, but I having to go back through the actual, like, reliving the experience in a way. Like putting myself back, like reinserting myself into my own life and walking through, like convincing myself that I am that age again and walking down the street and like walking out, you know, walking into that hotel, being in that room. I mean, I wasn't sleeping, and then I became insanely depressed, and all I was doing was sleeping. I mean, I've had to like hold myself to it because I felt myself copping out. But I sort of taking the book off the shelf is fairly easy, but to like really get into that, like that well of emotional terror, I just had to cut myself off from everybody and then like push myself to the brink, like take a bunch of samples, like write it all down, or, you know, sketch something out, and then be like, oh, okay, and then come back, and then sort of paint. And Judy was trying to get me to be a little bit more deliberate, and well, she wanted me to do an image that was explicit. I did not want to do that. And I did a bunch of drawings for this too, but I just wasn't comfortable with that. I think more emotionally than artistically. I mean, I would create, I don't know if I could live with, I mean, even seeing some of these sketches just, they freak me out. And maybe that's where I ultimately have to push myself to go.
This raises for me a question that I've been thinking about, which is, you know, on the one hand, explorations of what is most intimate and urgent to oneself can, by experience, provide the most compelling content for art. Certainly, I think for those of us, well, anyway, this has been the case for me. And another function of art that I think is really important, and I think several of us here share, is a way of making things happen in the world. And so your offering piece especially spoke to me in that way. But one of the things that I find with the art that I conceive that does move toward that second aim of art is sometimes it lacks the depth or the charge that the more personal stuff has. And I wonder if we can find ways of bringing that kind of charge to the artwork that has a specific aim in the world. I will talk a little bit about some of the things that are hard for me to talk about, and therefore that I'm interested in making art about. I mean, certainly I'm not alone in that. Many gay people in the United States feel that the marriage issue was sort of foisted upon us by a small group of activists and legal scholars, and that it has brought about a really strong backlash and has actually set back the cause of gay rights in the United States. And that, you know, gay people as a whole were not consulted as to what were the issues that are most important to us. And part of that opposition, people who don't think that same-sex marriage is where we ought to be focusing our attention, comes from a very strong part of the gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender community that believes that, you know, marriage itself is not a useful model for humans. But then, you know, when I read the stuff that people say about, you know, about why gay people shouldn't be allowed to marry, I'm speechless with rage and despair, and it takes so much emotional energy every day to tell yourself, I'm not evil, I'm not sick, you know, my relationship is not depraved. You know, even though I don't personally feel that, I have remarkably little guilt considering how I grew up. But it just takes so much psychic energy to combat that. And the fact that I'm ambivalent about this whole marriage issue makes it so much more complicated for me.
I want to address gender roles. I've always been curious about, do we come by the roles that we are in by nature or nurture? And because it seems, I kind of tend towards nurture. So it seems like at birth, society immediately disambiguates the baby, and the gender roles are assigned. And I just feel like you know, we barely budged since the cave dwelling. We barely budged in our roles since cave dwellers. I mean, you know, I mean, we tried, but it's still generally the same.
Really?
And
I haven't seen you go out and club any animals lately, Donna.
well, the man goes out. You know what I mean. So I have done a lot of drawing, which I'll share with you.
Okay, for this?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be really blunt with you.
Okay.
This is going to be so naive, because there have been years and years and years and years of work now and art now about gender.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you need to really...
Well, they're very atmospheric and almost abstract. They're not like...
And nobody's going to have a clue that's what you're
Marriage.
talking about.
Well, I'm afraid, since I am interested in ambiguity, that I might kind of go overboard on that.
I would be curious to see your personal connection to this
Subject matter.
big topic that you even say is ambiguous.
Ambiguous.
This big ambiguous topic,
Well,
because I feel like it is kind of lofty and it's sort of floating. That's not really anchored to you and your specific perspective. From what I mean, we've only heard a small paragraph of what you're talking about, but I don't see you in it.
Your first statement about how we barely budged since the caveman days, I mean, that suggests to me that there's something going on with yourself. I mean, it sounds like you're trying to externalize this concept, and maybe you should look a little more at what's going on with yourself. I mean, that's pretty
Big assumption.
Yeah.
Everybody's saying to you, Michelle, it starts with the self here. I mean, at some point, you're just going to have to jump in there. Don't go out to some outer space place where you're commenting on gender, which has already been done 1,000 times.
I've never painted about myself.
Oh!
I painted about religion, about attitudes, but never about.
So where are you now?
I have been leaning towards more and more ambiguous subjects, so I need to go the other direction.
I need to go in the other direction.
In terms of the form that that exploration should take, I began working with this form of using, I think of it sort of as a non-linear three-dimensional book. The last piece that I showed in my self-presentation.
I mean, that kind of installation piece,
Yeah.
multiple.
Yeah. Which was very, very rewarding for me, and it allowed me to to read and to tell stories, both top to bottom, front to back, and right to left. And I enjoyed constructing that so that every image, every direction had a relationship. I'm proposing an installation that is similar to what I initially described. It will be an installation near a wall, but three-dimensional, coming out from the wall. I'm conceiving it as 24 feet long by roughly 8 feet high by about 3.5 feet deep. The installation is conceived in multiples of 12, so there will be 12 texts on each of 3 different themes, 3 different perspectives on the same-sex marriage controversy. I use numbers a lot in my work to help me stay focused, and also 12 is a significant number, obviously in the Judeo-Christian tradition, which underscores the prohibitions against same-sex desire, but also in the Mormon tradition, there are still 12 apostles in the Mormon church. You're technically a young woman when you turn 12. Also, boys gain the priesthood when they turn 12. So there are a lot of 12s. And then I will also be incorporating objects. I'm creating 12 small wire cages and 12 paper nests. The image of nests and cages represents for me a sort of concrete representation of the sort of contrasting possibilities that marriage offers. I may also incorporate lesbian seagulls. Lesbian seagulls.
What are lesbians?
Are
seagulls lesbians?
Not all of them, no. But the seagull is the state bird of Utah, and there's the California seagull is the state bird of Utah, and I always identified with seagulls because I grew up outside of Utah initially, and I wanted to go home and be with the saints, and so I wore like little seagull pins, and seagulls were my bird. And so there's a legend about the Mormons, how the seagulls saved the Mormons. But then in the 1980s, there was a big story about how they had discovered these lesbian seagulls. And it was kind of a rallying cry for homosexuals everywhere. See, even the animals are queer. And so they have since then documented a lot of animals that engage in same-sex, both sexuality and partnering. But it turns out that the seagulls stopped being lesbians once there were once again enough male seagulls to go around.
I'm most excited about growing as an artist and
but I just have to make sure that the film
being part of this great group and the show.
You know, Michelle, only you know if you're willing to take the risk of actually letting yourself know how you feel.
What might help you is just try and access within yourself an emotion as you're trying to, I feel like you're trying to rationalize your approach to things, and if you can just feel something, that maybe you'll hook onto something.
I've never been able to do a self-portrait that looks like me.
Still I must obey, still I must invite.
See, I knew you could paint. I knew you could draw. I don't know why you were futzing around.
I have a hard time
coming out with this.
Expressing my feelings.
Yeah, well, but you made
person.
Yeah, but you made a big good.
Okay, good. I'm glad you like it.
You made a huge step.
I was dressed in embarrassment.
I approach this group with incredible humility because I am an art baby, a really, really baby. I was a lot of things before I came to the time when I was brave enough to call myself an artist.
Like a
I chose to do the project because I'm ambivalent about same-sex marriage. It actually has helped me clarify my thinking, and I think that is continuing. With the reading that I've done and the talking with people and just sitting down and moving images around by myself, I feel much more comfortable saying that I think is a bad idea. And I just hate to say that because, you know, it puts me in the position of being on the same side as people who hate me. But I would much rather, you know, fight for health care benefits not to be tied to who you sleep with, and, you know, the right for people to determine who has, you know, to just say who they want to have the right to see them in the hospital, leave their belongings to when they die, those things, rather than fighting to expand the institution of marriage. Primarily, a lot of this has been like confronting myself, becoming more and more comfortable with it, you know, that taking the book off the shelf, looking at it, you know, recalling the, you know, all the stuff, and then putting it back on the shelf. And it's like, you know, putting oil on a hinge and having it get easier and easier and easier each time, and getting it out in the public and not being, to be cheesy, like not staying silent anymore in a way. It's like an exorcism of sorts. That's sort of what's primarily important, and also hopefully maybe it'll allow me to move on and come up with new directions and new ideas.